Set 9.5 has been out on the servers for a couple of days now, and yes, even though there's a bunch of changes that are going to be happening throughout the PvE, a lot of things are going to be flip-flopped and switched around in terms of numbers and stats or whatever. The main things are going to stay the same. The number of units in a trait, the breakpoints, 2 stream, 4 stream, 6 stream, 9 stream, stuff like that, right? All is going to be the same, so we can still garner some level of information and value out of playing in the PvE, such as knowing what comps are nice, what are the itemizations that should be nicer with these certain units, what are like different lines that we can play with different reroll carries. And that's actually what we're going to talk about in today's video, where today we're going to talk about all of the 3-cost reroll carries. Tomorrow we're going to do all the 2-cost reroll carries, but today all the 3-cost reroll carries you can play in the current set, how to play around them, the boards that you can play around, and what to expect. Now obviously this video is subject for interpretation. There's going to be people who are going to watch this and they're going to go, no, like that what you're talking about is bullshit. This is how you actually play the board. And if that's you, comment, like, let me know. I want to hear your opinion on this. But without further ado, let's actually talk about this shit, because we got a lot to cover. We have a bunch to cover for today's video, because I did a lot of research going into every single 3-cost. I haven't played all of these boards myself. I've actually played the majority of them, but I haven't played all of them yet. So, some things are still up for interpretation. We don't have any data from Explorer or stats, so please bear that in mind. Obviously, these are what I believe is close to BIS/is best, but I mean, I could be wrong, and that's totally fine. And if you have a better suggestion, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your opinion. Now, let's get on to the video, because we got a lot to cover. First, Darius Reroll. Darius Reroll, Katarina Reroll, the most notably popular comp throughout basically all set 9, and it was just one of the sort of staples of set 9 in terms of compositions. In terms of 3-cost reroll carries, you play around the Darius 3-star, Katarina 3-star. Not much has changed around this board, although the breakpoints for Noxus is different. So now we are usually playing around 5 Noxus instead of 6 Noxus, because the breakpoints are different. It is now 3, 5, 7, 9, and so we're playing around 5 Noxus, so we can actually fit in the 2 challenger with the Warwick and the Juggernauts, but we can also fit in an extra unit as well, which is going to be this Neela over here. Now, I will talk about this real quick though. Noxus actually has a new premier 4-cost carry, and it's actually Mordekaiser, there, and you've probably seen clips of this unit, because this thing is a fucking unit. It's really, really fucking strong. One of the best carries in the set at the moment. Probably gonna be one of the most premier 4-cost carries in the set. At least that's what I see it being, especially because of how popular Noxus is. But this is actually one variation that you can play. As you can see, the Darius items are kind of interesting. It's Hodge, Guardbreaker, Night Harvester. Night Harvester is this new item. You deal 12% bonus damage, but if you fall below 60% health, this gets increased to 30% for the rest of combat. So you can actually frontline Darius in this position, not back here like you used to, and you can just get down a little bit, get the Night Harvester proc going, and just pop off. The reason why it's this itemization specifically, it's because of Vanquisher, which is a new trait. Basically, Vanquisher damage from the Vanquisher abilities can critically strike. Basically, it's like IEJG on these units for free, and they get a bit of bonus crit chance and crit damage. Now, this itemization in particular, Hodge, Guardbreaker, Night Harvester, actually gives you guaranteed 100% crit chance. So that's why this itemization is the way that it is, instead of something like a Deathblade, something like a GS, something like even Last Whisper is technically, I guess, okay. BT as well, something that you see pretty commonly on Darius. This is just one type of itemization. I don't know if it's good or not. I actually haven't tested this yet. I don't know if 100% crit actually matters. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you can just go with like a Titans and like a Deathblade instead. That's fine as well, but I want to talk about this because realistically, even though, yeah, this is one variation of Noxus reroll, I don't personally like this one. And the main reason is because I think Neela is really awkward. This is just a trait bot, and it's a very expensive trait bot. It's a 2-star 4-cost Vanquisher Neela that you're not even planning on itemizing, especially when you're rerolling on 7 for a while. You kind of want to use your money whenever you can to buy all the Dariuses and Katarinas as quick as possible. So instead of playing this variation of Noxus reroll, I actually prefer the Ekko version, where instead of playing around the Neela, you're playing around Ekko instead. This means that you don't actually have Vanquisher anymore, so instead you do need the IE again, and you're going to see an itemization that's very similar to previous sets, where it's like the Titans, the IE, and the Hodge. This can actually be Deathblade as well, depends on who you are, your playstyle, but nonetheless, still very, very good. Now, in this Noxus reroll board, keep in mind, you need to itemize your Darius and your Katarinas first. But if you don't actually manage to find a bunch of Katarinas, but you find the Mordekaiser too relatively pretty quickly, just itemize Mordekaiser instead. This can be your secondary carry instead of the Darius 3. Katarina 3 can come very, very later. And then instead, if that's the case, maybe you can switch out Ekko for something else. Maybe like a Slayer of some sort. Maybe like a rek'sai. That's fine as well. And then just play around that. That way you can get the Slayers in for Mordekaiser. He does a buttload of damage, and Darius can carry you out at the early and mid game. Falls off a little bit. 3-star, carries you out late game. Good stuff. Moving on a little bit too, just so you know, as the game progresses, you will be able to tech in some more legendary units. You want to switch the Warwick out for Aatrox eventually, and Heimerdinger in is probably your best in at this point. The only reason it's Heimerdinger, not anything else, is because there's just nothing else that really fits in that's kind of nice. You could do Vanquisher if you wanted to. You don't have to. If you do Vanquisher, that means you just don't have the IE here, but that's a very long time to not have IE on your Darius, and crit on his spell is super important. So in my opinion, I just think the Heimerdinger is just the best choice here. It's just the most flexible unit. You could also maybe do something like Rise as well. That's fine as well. Obviously you tech into Scion instead of the Samira here. Maybe you want extra bruisers, that's fine. You tech into Sejuani, I guess, but I think Heimerdinger will probably give you the most bang for your buck at level 8 if you manage to find it there. I don't know if there's anything else in here. Oh, real quick, the Noxus Crest. If you played set 9, you would know that Azir with Noxus Crest is one of the most notable Noxus Crest holders. But in this set, I don't really know how I feel about it. And the reason why is because before, it was a really good way to get a 4-cost 2-star on your board that will help stabilize you during stage 4, which is a very crucial point for Noxus Reroll, because whenever you play Noxus Reroll, stage 4 is when you start to fall off, because your board is still sitting on 2-star 3-cost carries, but everybody else is now playing around 4-cost and potentially even 2-star 4-cost, and your board is going to fall off and you're going to have a bad time. Azir was sort of a way to buffer and help alleviate the bleeding during that critical point. But nowadays, here's the thing. Azir items can actually just go onto Mordekaiser. Mordekaiser can actually use Azir items pretty well, especially because of RC being BIS on Mordekaiser. This is for certain. Nash's Tooth is fine on Azir, but it's also great on Mordekaiser. Archangels is okay on Azir, but great on Mordekaiser, right? You don't really have to play Azir anymore, and I quite honestly don't really see the stream of variation being played too often, if at all anymore. It would be a very niche case scenario where you just happen to find like a Ginsu's and like a Shiv, and that just you slammed it like really early on, and you just happened to find the Azir super early on, and then you played into it, like, I guess. But realistically speaking, 9 times out of 10 you're probably just gonna play the Mordekaiser instead. This Noxus Crest can actually probably go on Ekko instead. This actually ends up becoming a Warwick, and now you have an open slot. This could be anything you want. Maybe you want Slayers in, maybe you find that early Aatrox, switch out the Warwick, or maybe you just, you know, tech into the rek'sai. Maybe this allows you to play into Bruisers eventually, and then you can maybe even play into 7 Noxus, which is actually pretty strong, which we should talk about a little bit here. 7 Noxus, really strong board. 7 Noxus is, from what I understand, stupid strong. It's like really strong, at least from the PvE, from what I've seen. It's obviously, this is assuming that you hit the Darius 3 stars, but 7 Noxus is pretty cool. The thing about it is that 7 Noxus is sort of, it's stronger than what 6 Noxus was on the live servers on set 9, but it's weaker than 9 Noxus, which is what we currently have. I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but it feels very strong. So Noxus does feel a bit better here. Obviously, you're playing 2 shitters here. The Cassiopeia eventually goes away for the Scion here eventually, but overall, still a very, very solid board to play around. This is obviously if you have the Noxus Crest here. If you don't, then this Jarvan will unfortunately be a Cassiopeia, but nonetheless, still fine. Very strong board. Good time. Again, Warwick eventually becomes this Aatrox as well, and you're capping out pretty hard with some decent legendaries on the board. Finally, I do want to talk quickly about Darius, because he is now a Vanquisher as well. He's Noxus, Juggernaut, and Vanquisher. He's got 3 traits now. Vanquisher, there is this line in Vanquishers where you're playing like vertical Vanquishers, and like you have a Darius 3-star on your board. This line is weird. It's weird for a multitude of reasons. First off, you might have noticed the board's fucking expensive. This is a 111 gold board. Compare this to like the other boards. This is 90. This was 108, but this is like Omega capped out. This is 126, but it's like Omega capped out. But like this is like 93. This is really expensive for like a level 8 board, and like for it to be so capped out. Also, just insane amount of forecasts that you need to be playing on this board. On top of the fact that like to get to this point, you would have to get to level 8, which is kind of awkward. Like, how the fuck do you get to this point with level 8 and Darius 3-star? Like, it makes no sense. You're, like, high rolling. If anything, what ends up happening is that sort of typically when you play around a 4 Vanquisher board, you're playing around Neela, Xayah. These are your 2 primary carries. And what ends up happening is Darius sort of ends up being your item holder for Xayah, because Xayah really likes a lot of AD items, such as, like, the Deathblade, the GS, items like this, right? So basically what ends up happening is that Darius is item holding for Xayah, but if you happen to find a buttload of Dariuses and like negative Xayahs, then you could play into this 4 Vanquisher line. Assuming that you're tempoing into like a fast 8, but it's very likely that like a lot of comps, at least in this set, feels very tertiary carry. For example, Xayah, Neela, Darius, right? Go back a little bit. We have Darius, Mordekaiser, and Katarina 3. You know, this is just one prime example, but there's plenty. A tertiary carry seems to be like the name of the game. Keep it in mind though, it's just a hunch. It's not, take it with a grain of salt, okay? But like, I'm just saying, like, it's potentially a thing to keep in mind. By the way, that should give you a little bit of an idea as to what legends to look out for. Anyways, basically, that's enough of Darius reroll. Let's talk about Ekko reroll. Now, Ekko is interesting in the sense that Ekko is just like, it's kind of good and it's kind of bad. I don't know if this is ideal, to be completely honest. This board in particular, if it's ideal. The idea is that Swain and Silco are kind of flex in this situation, and you can actually flex into whatever with these 2 units. But like we talked about earlier with tertiary carries being like sort of like a thing that could potentially be a problem, Silco is sort of just like the best sort that you can play out of all the open traits here that I've noticed on the side. But just to keep in mind, Ekko 3, Katarina 3, for Rogue, they keep buffing the crap out of Rogue. I still don't think 4 Rogue is strong. This is just, if Ekko reroll was a thing, this is probably the board. I would only ever lean into this board if you have a lot of Echoes early on and really good items for it, and the Ixtal Hex. That word is so hard to pronounce, bro. The Ixtal Hex happens to be somewhere within the A file, or the A row rather, and it's like somewhere middle, and it's like a really strong, like it's fire, or it's like even ice might be okay for Ekko here. Maybe even I think it's the grass one. I forget if it's called wood, but wood, I think it gives you like bonus HP scaling over time, and it makes your unit bigger and like extra HP. If it's that case, then consider it. But overall, would I recommend playing this board? No. Would I recommend trying it out? Yeah, just see how it feels. But again, only ever run this line if you have like a good spot for it. If you get a rogue heart, it's actually pretty good. You get to drop graves here, which is really nice. This doesn't do anything except give you rogue, and you have an open slot, and you can maybe play something else, maybe like the J4 for extra frontline. I don't fucking know. But all of it's pretty good. Again, I don't really think Silco is the best unit here. I just don't know what else it could be. The reason being is that just because like your rogues are all going to jump into the back line, and then you just got Swain just like chilling over here, and then everyone's in the back line, Silco's just here to fend for himself, and he's just going to kind of die. So, I mean, I don't know how to feel about it. It seems fine to me. There's also like the Graves reroll variation. We're not going to talk about that today, but Graves reroll with the Milia reroll into the Kiana 3-stars, and then you can play into 4 rogue that way. But we're talking specifically about Ekko 3-star, and this seems to be the only viable line, at least that I can see in this current patch. Just to keep in mind, we do have 2 Zon available as well, because we do have Silco in here in the back. So Ekko, his best mod from what I can tell, it seems to be adaptive. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to be adaptive. If you have Virulent, great, just slam it on Silco, BIS. I have not seen Virulent once this whole time I've been playing PvE. I have played a lot of PvE so far, but I've only seen Virulent being offered on 2 Zon 0 times. I don't know why. Maybe it's a bug. I'm not really sure. But hey, if any like fucking Riot developers want to correct me on that, let me know. I'd love to hear it. Anyways, moving on. Jayce 3, don't play it. Moving on. Karma 3. Okay, wait, okay, oh, hold on. So Jayce 3 sucks. It still sucks. They try to make it a thing. It's still not a thing. I would only play it if you ever ran into it during Piltover and you happen to find so many, like you got offered like a shop with like 5 Jayces, and then you rolled into the next shop and you found like 3 Jayces. And it's like, okay, I guess I'm playing Jayce 3. How bad could it be? It's pretty bad. It's just a lot of money invested into a unit that isn't going to really do much when it scales further up as it gets stronger. Its ability, the bonus attack speed to Jayce and his adjacent allies, it actually doesn't increase the adjacent allies attack speed buff when you upgrade Jayce, which is weird. You would think it does, but it just doesn't. Instead, it just gives himself a little extra attack speed, and he does a bit of extra bonus physical damage. You can see it actually jumps quite a bit. It goes from 179 to 268 to 431, so it sounds like it does a lot. I have yet to see somebody pull this off. If you are running Jayce, and you're like, hey, I made this shit work, let me know. The only thing I can think of to like potentially make this work is if you play around Zon Jayce with robotic arm. That is like maybe some level of hidden tech. I'm not really sure, but like that's the only thing I can really think of. But if that's a thing that you think could potentially be strong, and you're like, hey, I want to theory craft this shit and figure it out, be my fucking guest and then comment and let me know, because I gave you the idea. I'm just saying. Real quick, Archangel is on this Jayce 3 here, purely because he's buffing his allies and the buff scales off AP, I guess. Don't play this shit, man. It's so bad. Moving on. Actually, you know what? If you played Zon Jayce with robotic arm, let me know how you did. I want to look into the stats of that as soon as this set goes live. Like, it could be good. Maybe it's good. I don't know. Moving on. Next, we got, what is this? Karma Reroll. Karma Reroll. Nothing has changed. Nothing's different. This shit is just Karma. You can play this if you have an Invoker start. It's pretty easy to play into it. Invokers kind of plays for itself. You just have some Invokers at the beginning, and you're playing around Cassiopeia 2, and you have like a Galio, and you're like, oh, ooh, you know? And like maybe you have like some rods and some like gunblades and ionic sparks or whatever, and what do you know? Here you are. Nothing's different. If you played it before, great, you know what it is. If you haven't played it before, maybe you didn't play set 9. Real quick, it's just buy all the Invoker units, play all the Invoker units, and then at level 8, oh, you're slow rolling at level 7, hit Karma 3-star, maybe Taric 3-star, it's a nice addition. And then level 8, you just go and tech an Ari. If you are lucky enough, you can play an Invoker Crown on her, if I can fucking find it. There we go. And drop the Milio, and you get to play something else. Works out beautifully. But is this board good? No. It feels pretty bad. It just feels bad. I would say Tekkenheimer at 8. Or at 9, I guess it's 8 if you're playing the Invoker Ari, and if I had to guess, it's probably just like triple Reparo. It's triple repair. I think people are still like kind of sleeping on it. I think it's good. I actually don't think it's bad at all by any means, and because the fight like lasts for a long time, you actually garner a lot of value out of getting triple repair here. Good stuff. Definitely look into it. Anyways, moving on. Again, not much to talk about here, just because everybody knows this board. Like this was like all set 9. Like we were talking about Invokers for so long. Moving on. Misfortune and Nautilus. Ooh, new units. All right, so Misfortune 3 and Nautilus 3. There are two main boards that come with this this pair, or this duo, if you will. The first one is the Azir Misfortune 3 board. Did I talk about this in the previous video? I think I did. This is like a pretty strong ass board. The idea is that you don't actually play around the idea of rerolling at 7 for Nautilus 3 and Misfortune 3. You could if you have a lot of Misfortunes or a lot of Nautiluses, but realistically, you can just like tempo level 7 with like a board that looks something like this. And then at level 8, you get the Azir 2, and then when you're trying to go 9, you're like, okay, how many Misfortunes? Like let's count the bank, you know, see how much we got stored up, and if we have a lot, like maybe consider rolling down for Misfortune 3, and then you can win out with Misfortune 3 and even potentially Nautilus 3 if you are high rolling. I will say Nautilus 3 is a fucking beast, and so is Misfortune. These both of them deal a lot of damage. Yeah, both. Nautilus actually deals a decent amount of damage, even though he's like a full ass tank, and Misfortune just fucks everybody. Like just like it's a disgusting amount. It's so bad. Like she's just in there, you know. It's terrible. So anyways, that was oddly graphic. I will say though, Misfortune 3 is definitely a really good win con to play around. She's actually one of the stronger 3-cost 3-stars from my perspective. The only other 3-star 3-cost that I can think of that is like relatively close to her in power is maybe Darius 3, but I actually think Misfortune 3 is a bit more consistent. In terms of positioning this unit, because I think it's a little important to talk about. Some people like to argue that Misfortune BIS like positioning, if you will, is like middle of the fucking board. I guess the idea is that her cross is perpendicular. It's not like an X, it's like a cross. So if it's a cross, the idea is that she just casts her ult on like whichever unit she's targeting. So for example, if we full board this boy, and let's say like the opponent has like a unit here, right, in the middle on this side, and our Misfortune is autoing this Swain, for example, she will ult in a cross that looks kind of like this, right? Visualize it a little bit. I'm not drawing it out for you. Anyways, yeah, I mean, it's basically it. So apparently that's nice. Do you have to do it? I mean, I don't know. I guess it's good. Maybe they'll change the way that her targeting changes though, so we're not sure. She might start targeting like the largest clump, and then they'll lower her damage output, but I mean, I don't know. Very strong unit though, regardless. Anyways, really great board. You play into these here for your secondary carry, and good times. It's good stuff. I love this board. I will say though, there's also the 7 Bilgewater, the vertical Bilgewater board. I know I said in the last video that I could not possibly imagine how you could play this line vertically, and then Dishso played it, and then I was like, okay, fuck me, I guess. Turns out it's actually kind of good. Bilgewater hits like a truck. I will say though that if you are playing vertical Bilgewater though, you're basically fast 8 into like this board, and then you are basically going for Misfortune 3 as your win condition. GP2 I don't think is enough of a condition. You would actually probably have to start taking out of bilge water in order to sort of meet the criteria in order to, you know, be competitive against everybody else. But if you haven't tried 7 bilge water yet, please try it. I played it for the first time today and it feels very strong. The vertical it's surprisingly a lot of damage. Even though you're playing like a Graves 1 and an Alawi 1 on your board, it's surprisingly kind of good. I know Dish Soap specifically played it with What the Forge. If you want to go find the tuber, I'll put it in the link below. I'll put a link in the description if someone reminds me. But he played it with What the Forge, which is pretty cool. The idea is, I don't know if this is the BIS augment. I don't think it is. I think he was just like trolling. If you're watching the video or the VOD, you would know he's kind of just like, I guess I'll try this, right? But it was actually pretty cool because the idea is that with What the Forge, any items you get, you can kind of use them in this comp. Any AD items like Death's Defiance or like whatever, Hull Crusher even, can go on Neela here. Eternal Winter is great on Nautilus, great on J4 here. Triforce is good on Neela. Mana Zane's good on GP. Collector's good on GP and Misfortune. Zanya's is good on Misfortune. You get the idea. All this is good. Trickster's Glass is good for Frontline. Sniper's Focus is good for Misfortune and Zaya and GP. DFG is good on GP. Goldmancer Staff is good on GP. Mogul Mail is good on the Frontline. Like, all of them can be used. All the Orna artifacts can be used. Sorry, I went on a bit of a tangent here. But you get the idea. It's surprisingly kind of good. So if you're playing Bilge Water and you're like, hey, What the Forge? You know, why not? Definitely something to consider. But again, try it out though. It's a cool trait. Okay, moving on. Neeko, another new unit. Oh fucking boy. This unit sucks right now. I'm just gonna talk about the board now and theoretically what the board that should work is. But like, did that sentence make sense? Like, Neeko sucks right now. And it's not because like she's inherently like a bad unit. Her numbers are just poor right now, in my opinion. I think you have probably seen this happen too, but somebody is trying to play Neeko reroll and they die. Whoop-de-fucking-do. They'll hit like all the conditions for the board and then they'll still lose. And they're like what happened, you know? So this board isn't great. You also notice there's Soraka and Kiana here in the bottom right. The reason being is because it's one or the other. If you have a bunch of Kianas, and the Ich style is very, very nice. The Hex is good. It's good for Neeko. Feel free to play Kiana and you can draw the Soraka. This is also really, really great. You basically roll out 7. Aphelios is your main carry. You have Graves 2 instead of Jayce. The reason being is that even though Jayce does provide the extra attack speed with Aphelios, in my experience, it's not fun. It's never a fun time. And the reason why is because you're just clumping here. And it sucks. You just get hit with random AoE, Jayce gets focused, and then Aphelios gets focused, and there's nothing you can do. Also, Graves just does provide like attack speed slow against the opponents, so you can actually position him like a little bit further back, and then he'll just put in work, throw in some CC, call it a day. Good stuff. Neeko, I don't know her BIS to be completely honest with you, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's like Night Harvester, Archangels, JG. Archangels is a definite for sure, and you can definitely argue Ionic Spark is great on her as well. The only reason why I don't have Spark on Neeko is because of actually a very important fundamental, where your Shred should ideally not be on your primary carry. Which is, you know, sometimes it does happen, but for example, with Aphelios, instead of having like, you know, Ginsu's GS and Deathblade, sometimes people will opt for a Last Whisper. Completely reasonable. The idea is that Aphelios wants Shred. Good stuff. But if you can ever afford to, you can just instead put the Shred on a different unit, and then that way your main carry has 3 really, really strong offensive items and doesn't have to worry about shredding the opponent, because let's say, for example, in this setup, let's say Taric, or maybe even Shen here is holding like the Spark and the Gargoyles and maybe even Evan Shroud, a new item that is AoE Shroud or AoE Shred for your units. Really great. It's basically Ionic Spark but for AD units. It's really nice. You can also, if you wanted to, split these up. That way Taric is able to shred for the Neeko, and you can kind of freely position these two. And then Shen, you just make sure it's on the same side as the Aphelios, and you can position these two wherever. Good stuff. Anyways, that's one variation of this board, though. There is a second variation, and this is probably the more common one you'll see, which is going to be the 4 Bastion line, again with Neeko and Taric 3-star, but you're also playing Silco and Aphelios with Jinx. Jinx acts as a very, very nice connector between Aphelios and Silco, and you just get some really good stuff going on. You get the Gunners going on for the Aphelios, which is great, but you also get that Virulent, if it's good for Silco, onto Silco, which is great. And basically, you can actually itemize Silco in a way with like Gunblade Morelos, where he's just like helping the board survive. Like Gunblade, he just throws the shit all over the floor. He's just like bleh, like everywhere, right? Ooh, shimmer. And then he fucking like AoEs everything, and then he just heals everything up with Gunblade and Morelos, and everything's wounded, and everyone's having a good time. Good stuff. Just don't forget the Spark, okay? Make sure you have Spark. Spark, Evan Shroud, really good stuff here. And again, Neeko is your secondary, if not tertiary carry, and Silco can even be a primary carry if you just put an Archangels on him. Really, really easy, good stuff. And again, Virulent, if you have managed to find it for 2s on, good stuff. Definitely, if you have Virulent, consider Silco, because he's a very, very good unit under the right conditions. That's basically it though, for this board. Let's move on to the next one. I mean, obviously cap out with like 6 fashions. You get the idea. Moving on, rek'sai Reroll. rek'sai Reroll is a board that we definitely saw in the previous set 9. With, I believe the most common variation was when you played with Jayce 2 as sort of like your backline DPS. But rek'sai 3 is fine here. Jayce is okay, but now because rek'sai is also a Slayer, Void Bruiser, but now a Slayer, you can actually play Mordekaiser, which is good. Now you have a real unit in the backline who serves a real purpose instead of like a Jayce with 0 challenges, which is like kind of weird. Definitely want RFC on Mordekaiser though if you are running this. Archangel's Gunblade is really great. Gets to heal up the bruisers in the front line. Really good stuff. Gets to actually utilize some Noxus stacking as well with the Darius and the Scion here. The idea being is that Scion is also a Noxus unit if you happen to find it, and then you get to tech in the Noxus, start stacking up. It's a bit late into the game, but every little bit of stats helps. You get to play Asher with the Morelos, so you get to, you know, wound everything on the board. Great time. Good time. Everyone's having a good time. Obviously, as the game progresses, you can put in Juggernauts as well for the Darius, but also this, you know, mainly for the Aatrox here. You get the Darken as well, and then it is a little awkward 3 out of 2 Slayer, but then at level 9, just, you know, whoever, doesn't matter. Boom, done. And that's the board. Really good stuff for Slayer. What's going on here? Why is it 3? Oh, yes, I'm stupid. Sorry. There we go. 4 Slayer, 4 Bruiser, really good stuff. Like, really cool way to cap out the board here. But nonetheless, really strong board. rek'sai 3 has its problems in the past, but it feels actually decently now. I think the Slayer buff really helped, so it's definitely a unit to definitely consider for a reroll carry. Just keep in mind, it used to be BT Titans for BIS. That was statistically backed. That's a word. But with rek'sai nowadays, I think it's Titans BT Sterax. I would hope it is, because I'm a little tired of running double BT on rek'sai. But, I mean, if it's like some variation of like BT Titans, BT Sterax, or BT Titans Sterax, or Sterax BT, I don't fucking know. I mean, BT's in there for sure. Everything else is, I don't fucking know. But still, nonetheless, really good stuff. Really solid units. Definitely keep it in mind. Also, Cho'Gath in here too, because Cho'Gath 3 is always potentially possible if you hold on to every Cho'Gath you see. Good stuff. Also, there is the other variation, which is 4 Bruiser, 4 Slayer, which is not as pretty as the Noxus version, but basically in this version, you're not really relying on finding that Noxus. Like, you're just playing, you're just like, this is just Vi, and it's fine, and then you find the fucking Scion, and then you switch into like Noxus late game maybe, but you don't actually need to, because like what's the fucking point? So like, you know, it's a thing that you could do, but like whatever. 4 Bruiser, 4 Slayer. I will say though, this version, you might notice Quinn in the backline. This is a tertiary carry comp rather, sorry, where Quinn is actually running the Deathblade GS and Last Whisper here. You could play this board. It's really hard to hit. Just because it's hard to get to 7 like relatively healthy and then roll for the Quins and the rek'sais. I will say though, if you do manage to hit, this is a really strong board. Quinn 3 is also quite a menace with the right itemization. Just make sure that Quinn and rek'sai are on the same sides, because that way she's able to armor shred for rek'sai, which is really, really great. And Mordekaiser is doing his own thing here. Any extra tank items go on whichever is your strongest tank. Bippity boppity boop, you're done. Also, Kiana becomes Aatrox. You get the idea. Good stuff. Moving on. Finally, Sona and vel'koz. This sort of falls into the same category as Jayce, but like this shit sucks. Like it fucking sucks. I played it. It feels bad. You might be looking at this board. You're like, this board looks like dookie. Like, why would I ever play this board? The idea is that this is actually the exact same multicaster board as set 9. The only difference is that instead of a Twisted Fate, it was a Teemo. And yeah, the front line looks like shit, but you used to fortify the front line with ZZ Rod, but that's not a thing anymore. So, I mean, it is a thing, but it's like just a really hard thing to get. So, it's just, it feels kind of bad. So now this is actually your front line. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts. This is just your front line. And it just obviously doesn't last long enough, but the idea of multicast is that you blow up the board so quickly that it doesn't matter. You don't even really need a front line. But the problem is that the units right now, they just don't dish out enough damage. It's close, but it's not enough to push them over the edge where 4 multicaster is even that good. So realistically, I would just say don't play this board, period. And instead, if you're gonna play around like a 3-star vel'koz, just play into sorks. It just makes way more sense. This is a very standard 6-sork board. This is obviously with the sork spat. If you don't have the sork spat here, you just drop this and maybe even drop, like, I don't know, you can even technically drop Silco here, and then just play around like an extra unit here, probably a multicaster, probably like Sona, and like that's fine. It's fine. As you may or may not have noticed, I didn't actually include the sork spat on top of the Sona here. When I was talking about like the 6-sork version. The only reason being is that because the Demacia doesn't really matter anymore. So I've actually found that I prefer to not sork spat the Sona, but actually like Shen or Karma. Probably Karma is ideal, but she dies so quickly anyways, it doesn't really matter. You can even like do it on Jarvan, I guess that's fine. But rather just make sure that you can get 6-sork in, and it fits relatively pretty nicely on level 8, which is where you're normally playing the sork line. Because in case you didn't know, the sork line, it's a lot of HP preservation early game, so you can tempo into a fast 8 and then you find your board. Yeah, it's the same as Set 9. But basically, that's the board. And then you can secondary carry the Silco, obviously, if you're not playing around this vel'koz 3, which you almost never are. But if you happen to find it that one time, I guess it's fine. You just take down to 4-sork instead. And then maybe in that scenario, you can, you know, figure something out. I don't know. I'm a little tired. Anyways, that's basically it for the board. That's basically it for the video. I hope you guys learned something. Tomorrow, we'll go over all the 3-star 2 costs. Yeah, 3-star 2 costs. And I'll see you guys then. Anyways, take care, guys, and happy climbing. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you guys later. If all these boards are fake, I'm sorry, and bye-bye now.